Darth Vader, the central figure of the Star Wars saga, is a character defined by duality, regret, and the haunting consequences of his choices. Born as Anakin Skywalker, he embodied hope, potential, and unparalleled talent within the Force. However, his transformation into Darth Vader marked a descent into despair, driven by fear, ambition, and ultimately love turned to obsession. This critical analysis explores Vader's regrets and examines the tragedy of a man who could have been a luminous force for good, yet was consumed by the shadow of his own insecurities and fears. Anakin's story begins as a slave on Tatooine, a boy of remarkable aptitude whose innate connection to the Force set him apart. Recognized by Qui-Gon Jinn as the Chosen One, Anakin carried the weight of immense expectations. His potential was unprecedented, but it came with vulnerabilities. The trauma of slavery, separation from his mother, and a desperate desire for belonging and control over his fate. The Jedi Order, with its rigid structure and detachment from personal attachments, failed to address these vulnerabilities, leaving Anakin vulnerable to manipulation. Palpatine, the future Emperor, exploited Anakin's insecurities, gradually eroding his trust in the Jedi and stoking the flames of his ambition. This manipulation was crucial in Anakin's eventual transformation, yet it does not absolve him of responsibility for the choices he made. One of Anakin's deepest regrets must undoubtedly be his betrayal of the Jedi Order. The Jedi represented peace, justice, and the ideals of selflessness, principles Anakin himself once admired. However, the Jedi's dogmatic approach to emotions, particularly attachment, conflicted with Anakin's deeply human need to protect those he loved. This tension reached its peak in Anakin's relationship with Padme Amidala. His love for Padme, though genuine, became possessive, driven by his fear of losing her as he had lost his mother. When Anakin began to experience visions of Padme's death in childbirth, this fear turned into desperation, and he became susceptible to Palpatine's promises of power through the dark side. Anakin believed he could save Padme, but in doing so, he betrayed his principles, his friends, and ultimately himself. The massacre at the Jedi Temple during Order 66 represents a moment of irreparable moral descent for Anakin. Killing the Jedi, including younglings, marked the point where he fully embraced his new identity as Darth Vader. Yet, even in these dark moments, regret simmered beneath the surface. Vader's actions were driven by fear of failure and the delusion that his deeds were justified to protect Padme. However, this belief was shattered when his actions indirectly caused her death. In that moment, Anakin lost not only the woman he loved but the very reason for his fall. His transformation into Vader was complete, not as a figure of strength and control but as a man consumed by self-loathing and grief. If Anakin had realized his full potential as a Jedi, the galaxy could have been transformed. As the Chosen One, Anakin was prophesied to bring balance to the Force. In his prime, his mastery of the Force was unparalleled, and his courage and determination could have been the Jedi Order's greatest asset. Anakin's connection to both the light and dark sides of the Force gave him unique insight into the complexities of morality, an understanding that could have bridged the gap between the Order's rigid doctrine and the needs of the galaxy. Yet, his fall ensured that this potential was never realized. Instead of uniting the galaxy, Anakin became an instrument of its division, a tool of the Empire's oppression rather than a beacon of hope. Regret also defines Vader's relationship with his son, Luke Skywalker. Initially unaware of Luke's existence, Vader's discovery of him reignited the spark of humanity buried within his armored shell. Luke represented what Anakin could have been: a compassionate, idealistic Jedi uncorrupted by fear or ambition. Vader's pursuit of Luke was fraught with conflict. On one hand, he sought to bring Luke to the dark side, seeing him as a means to overthrow Palpatine and reclaim some semblance of control. On the other, he longed for connection, for a relationship untainted by betrayal or loss. Luke's steadfast belief in the good within Vader became a mirror, forcing him to confront the person he once was and the choices he had made. Anakin's deepest fears were not limited to loss. They extended to failure, insignificance, and the realization that his fall had brought ruin instead of salvation. His actions as Vader, crushing rebellion, enforcing tyranny, and perpetuating suffering, stand in stark contrast to the hero he once dreamed of being. On a symbolic level, the mechanical suit and mask that defined Vader's appearance served as both a prison and a reminder of his self-inflicted wounds. Each breath he took was a testament to his fall, a chilling reminder of the price he paid for power and the fragility of the human he once was. The dynamic between Anakin's unfulfilled potential and Vader's actions is a tragedy of epic proportions. Where Anakin could have brought balance and healing to the galaxy, Vader became an agent of destruction. Yet, even in his darkest moments, traces of regret and humanity endured. His ultimate redemption through Luke shows that, despite his countless mistakes, the core of Anakin Skywalker, the man who sought to protect and love, was never completely extinguished. In sacrificing himself to save Luke and destroy the Emperor, Vader reclaimed his identity as Anakin and fulfilled the prophecy in a way he could never have foreseen. Vader's regrets are not simply the result of his external failures but stem from the internal conflict that defined his life. At his core, Anakin Skywalker was a man who yearned for love, belonging, and the power to protect those he cared for. These desires, though noble in themselves, became distorted by fear, leading to his downfall. Vader's story is not only one of power and loss but of the enduring struggle between light and darkness, a struggle that resides in all beings. His regrets serve as a cautionary tale about the consequences of fear, the dangers of unchecked ambition, and the importance of confronting one's inner demons. The planet Coruscant, the seat of the Jedi Order and the center of galactic politics, plays a symbolic role in Anakin's story. Once a place of promise and opportunity, it becomes a haunting backdrop to his downfall. The grand spires of Coruscant that once represented the galaxy's potential for unity and growth become a stark reminder of how that potential was squandered. For Anakin, the city-planet embodies the duality of his life, the heights he could have achieved and the depths to which he fell. In the end, Anakin Skywalker's greatest regret may not have been any single choice or action but the realization of what he could have been. His fall to Darth Vader was not simply a loss for himself but for the galaxy as a whole. Yet, his story offers a glimmer of hope, the possibility of redemption, the enduring power of love, and the reminder that even the darkest paths can lead back to the light. Darth Vader's regrets can be traced to a singular, pivotal moment: his decision to betray Mace Windu and align himself with Palpatine. This act was the point of no return for Anakin Skywalker, the moment when fear and desperation overcame reason and integrity. While many of Anakin's struggles and flaws were apparent long before this, his betrayal of Mace Windu crystallized his descent into darkness, breaking him in ways that would reverberate for the rest of his life. From this moment onward, Anakin was no longer simply a conflicted Jedi. He became a man enslaved by the very fear he sought to conquer. The circumstances leading to Anakin's fateful decision reveal the depth of his internal conflict. Palpatine had meticulously planted seeds of doubt in Anakin's mind, positioning himself as a mentor and confidant while undermining Anakin's faith in the Jedi Order. Anakin's love for Padme and the prophetic visions of her death made him vulnerable to Palpatine's promises of forbidden knowledge, the power to cheat death itself. When Anakin discovered that Palpatine was the Sith Lord responsible for orchestrating the galaxy's turmoil, he faced a critical choice: report him to the Jedi Council, as duty demanded, or use Palpatine's power to save Padme. Initially, Anakin appeared to choose the Jedi. He informed Mace Windu of Palpatine's true identity, ostensibly placing his faith in the Order. Yet, even in this moment, his trust was fragile, and his fear of losing Padme lingered in the background. When Mace Windu confronted Palpatine, Anakin's loyalty to the Jedi crumbled under the weight of his desperation. As Mace prepared to strike Palpatine down, Anakin intervened, severing Mace's hand and enabling Palpatine to kill him. In that instant, Anakin shattered the moral framework that had defined his life. He betrayed the Jedi Order, his comrades, and the ideals he once held sacred. Anakin's decision to betray Mace was not merely a moment of weakness. It was the culmination of years of internal struggle. By acting out of fear rather than principle, Anakin crossed a line from which there was no easy return. The consequences of this choice were immediate and devastating. Palpatine, seizing the opportunity, christened him Darth Vader and set him on a path of destruction. Anakin's identity began to unravel almost instantly. In betraying Mace, he also betrayed himself, abandoning the ideals of justice and compassion that had once defined him. This self-betrayal fractured Anakin's psyche, leaving him broken and malleable to Palpatine's will. The tragedy of this moment lies in its irrevocability. Until then, Anakin still had the potential to redeem himself. He could have stood by Mace Windu and helped bring Palpatine to justice, possibly ending the Sith's influence and averting the fall of the Republic. Instead, his fear of losing Padme consumed him, blinding him to the greater consequences of his actions. By choosing to save Palpatine, Anakin effectively traded the lives of countless Jedi and the freedom of the galaxy for a slim, uncertain chance to save one person. This decision was not born of love but of possessiveness, a refusal to accept the possibility of loss, even at the cost of everything else he held dear. The immediate aftermath of Mace Windu's death illustrates the weight of Anakin's regret. In the hollow, trembling moments after the deed, Anakin kneels before Palpatine, declaring his allegiance as Darth Vader. His voice quavers with anguish, and his expression betrays the profound conflict within him. Even as he commits himself to the Sith, he is aware, on some level, that he has made a terrible mistake. His decision was not one of triumph or empowerment but of desperation and surrender. From this moment onward, Anakin was no longer the master of his fate. He was a pawn in Palpatine's grand design. Anakin's betrayal of Mace Windu also marked the beginning of his disconnection from himself. He rationalized his actions by clinging to the belief that he could still save Padme, but this delusion only deepened his despair. As he carried out Palpatine's orders, massacring the Jedi at the temple and slaughtering the separatist leaders, Anakin's identity as Darth Vader took root. Each act of violence eroded the humanity he had left, leaving him increasingly hollow and reliant on the dark side to suppress his guilt. The choice to betray Mace Windu was not just a single act. It was the first step in a chain of events that would define Vader's existence as one of perpetual regret and self-loathing. In hindsight, Anakin's decision to intervene against Mace Windu reveals the fragility of his moral foundation. Though immensely powerful, he lacked the emotional resilience and self-awareness to confront his fears and insecurities. His fall underscores the dangers of unchecked fear and the consequences of placing personal desires above broader responsibilities. The weight of this failure haunted Vader for the rest of his life, even if he suppressed it beneath layers of anger and denial. The man who had once dreamed of being a hero became an instrument of tyranny, and the galaxy paid the price for his weakness. The betrayal of Mace Windu was the moment that broke Anakin Skywalker, both figuratively and literally. It was the point at which he abandoned the possibility of redemption in favor of a path dictated by fear and despair. In choosing to betray the Jedi, Anakin severed the very ties that gave his life meaning, leaving him adrift in a sea of regret. This moment, more than any other, defined the tragedy of Darth Vader, a man who could have been a savior but instead became a symbol of broken potential and shattered ideals.